Herkese merhaba. İzmir Dilbilim Çevresi olarak 127.sini gerçekleştireceğimiz Dilbilim buluşmalarımızda bu hafta konuğumuz Doktor Öğretim Üyesi Sayın Vildan İnci Kavak. Hocam hoş geldiniz.
Hoş buldum. Teşekkür ederim.
Hocamızın Translanguaging in Bilingual Classroom Interaction isimli bir sunumu olacak. Daha sonra da soru cevap bölümüyle devam edeceğiz bugün de oturumumuza. Hocam sözü size vermek istiyorum.
Teşekkür ederim. Tekrar bu davet için çok teşekkür ederim. İzmir dil çevrelerinin bir parçası olduğum için bu seriye benim de katkı sunmama izin verdiğiniz için çok çok teşekkür ediyorum. Sunumum İngilizce olacak. O yüzden İngilizce olarak devam ediyorum. Hi everybody, good to see you all. I hope you had your dinners and you've taken your teas and coffees and be prepared for my talk, which is titled as Translanguaging in Bilingual Classroom Interaction. Let's see the outline of my talk today. So I'll talk about the models of bilingualism and multilingualism. We'll give you brief information about the definition of translanguaging and its use in the classroom. And then we'll introduce the study we conducted recently, and we'll give you some representative extracts, and we'll end up with some common practices in different disciplines, and we'll provide some suggestions, and we'll end with selected references. So when we look at the models of bilingualism and multilingualism, and we can talk about three different models. The first two of them were introduced by Cummins in successive years. And the last one, translanguaging theory, is one of the recent ones proposed by Garcia and Wei in 2009. So if we look at the first one, and when we look at this picture, we can say that it's believed that languages are located in two separate language systems in a person's brain. And they've got, as you can see in the picture, they've got standard and well-defined borders, and they don't interfere with each other. So the learners should be exposed to the target language to be able to proficient in L2 or in L3. So these are the times when the mother tongue was banned in language classrooms. These were the times when the teachers warned the students, say it in English, English only please. So in the second one, you can see, and then again, it was proposed by Cummins in after a couple of years. And here he accepted that the languages are not located in the brain in separate compartments. Actually, they have some common underlying features. And this model is also called iceberg hypothesis or linguistic interdependence model. So here you can see languages can look like located in two different compartments, but actually if you look at the bottom, if you look at the underlying features, they are located together. Because they share some linguistic and metalinguistic practices, and these practices can be transferred, these competencies can be transferred from one language, from maybe L1 to L2. So these have connections with each other. So in those years, scholars did contrastive analysis. So here they used L1, but only to be able to identify potential problems and the barriers to learn the second or the third languages. And in the third one, and it's called dynamic bilingualism, and it was defined by Garcia and Wei in 2009. So they propose that no languages are superior to each other. So no matter if an individual is monolingual, bilingual, or multilingual, they have a unique linguistic repertoire, and this repertoire is collected through dynamic social interactions. And so if you look at this tree, and it's called a banyan tree, Garcia makes an analogy between banyan tree and people's linguistic repertoire. So she asks, can you identify which ones are the roots, which ones are the branches? And she says it's impossible to identify and separate these. So this tree has multiple trunks, roots, but you can see the relationship of them, and they've got networked, and they have an interconnected system, and they've got aerial roots, as you can see here. So these roots go like an aerial, and actually it's very similar to the linguistic system. So it can look like there are different types of trees here, but actually it's just one organism, very similar to multilingual speakers' linguistic repertoire. And so I think it's a very good analogy to represent people's linguistic systems. So when you look at another analogy by Garcia and Clifton, and they say learning a language is not very similar to riding a bicycle, because if we say that the one wheel represents L1 and the other represents L2, so to be able to ride the bicycle, they need to go in a very balanced way. But it's like these languages are in competition. They go in a very balanced way. But actually, when you're learning a language, they never go in a very balanced way. So L1 and L2, they always go at different levels. So she also say it's not a unicycle as we call subtractive bilingualism. So if we ban L1 in the classroom for the sake of learning L2 or L3, it's not good. So we get rid of one language to be able to gain proficiency in another. And she says it's more like ATV, all-terrain vehicle, because they can go on any surfaces, even if it's uneven. So it's very similar to make a successful communication, because when bilinguals or multilinguals speak, they use their entire linguistic repertoire, no matter it belongs to what language. So to be able to go on the surface of ridges, craters, on uneven interactive terrains. So then what is translanguaging? And so it is proposed by St. Williams in the Welsh context in 1994. And Garcia defines translanguaging as an approach to bilingualism that is centered not on languages, as has often been the case, but on the practice of bilinguals that are readily observable. So they focused on the observable bilingual behavior. So these worldwide translanguaging practices are seen here not as marked or unusual, but rather taken for what they are, namely the normal mode of communication. So it's like the default mode of a bilingual or multilingual. So we can say that translanguaging theory blurred boundaries because it creates synergy, and all these multiple discursive practices in which learners, bilinguals, engage in order to make sense of their bilingual worlds. So here, language shouldn't be taught as considered as a set of given features like English, Turkish, German, French, and discrete skills anymore. Instead, it's an ongoing process that only exists as languaging. So here the focus is on the constant meaning-making process. And what about translanguaging in education? Of course, it has been a hot debate whether it should be welcomed or L1 should be used or not. But many scholars again proposed potential benefits of using translanguaging because it supports students' comprehension, for them to understand the challenging text, helps students to develop linguistic practices for academic context. It creates space for students' bilingualism. It doesn't only feed into their target language, but also mother tongue and all the other skills as well. It encourages students to preserve their bilingual identities. So when we look at the Turkish context, students come to the university or come to any level of education or institute at different levels of English proficiency. And in our context, English is a foreign language. And so outside of the classroom, they don't have a chance of speaking unless they live near the seaside, where they can find, people from other countries or native speakers. And so expecting these students to use English or the target language constantly and persistently is unrealistic. But when they do so, when they use the mother tongue, they are generally blamed for being lazy or underachievers or underperformers. They are looked at as failing students. Instead, they should be treated as learners in the progress of building up a complex knowledge of a new and more practical language in between. So classroom translanguaging, so it's a very common practice, especially in the classrooms where the students' mother tongue is not the language of instruction in EMI context. So it encourages learners to participate, elaborate, and raise questions by scaffolding. All these studies are supported by sociocultural theory, and then they see the translanguaging as a way of scaffolding. And classroom translanguaging also increases the inclusion, participation, and understandings of pupils in the learning processes, developing less formal relationships between participants, conveying ideas more easily, and accomplishing lessons. So teachers and students often cooperate in the co-construction of knowledge in the classroom. So if students use their L1 in tandem with L2 strategically, their language skills and content mastery can improve together and simultaneously. So there are some strategical translanguaging practices. And for example, you can use a text in one language and then discuss it in another language. You can move from a text in one language into another text in another language. So the topic can be related or successive. You can discuss in one language and check understanding their comprehension in another language. You can read in one language but write in another language. You can discuss in one language but write in another language or vice versa. So all of these are very important. They integrate students' entire linguistic resources, and students have to process information in different languages, and then it supports their learning. And as they process, as they engage more, they have more mental processes, they learn much better, they remember for longer times, and they can internalize the knowledge, content, and also personalize it. So here, I will talk about an article that we published and which I am one of the co-authors, and it was supported by British Council. It was a project, and later on, so as the outcome of this project, we published a report and also an article. And let's look at the details of this study. And so we collected data from two prestigious universities, Gaziantep and Çukurova University, offering EMI courses in different departments. There are three key criteria for the selection of choosing these programs, and the departments adopt English as the medium of instruction in the delivery of courses with no possibility of accessing these programs in Turkish, and they represent two different branches of science. So we collected data from English language and literature and also engineering departments. So one of the department is language focused, whereas the other one is content focused. So thus there might be different patterns of translanguaging practices across these departments, and they host a high number of students. So it's practical for us to examine translanguaging patterns and functions to achieve a considerable analytical depth. And also, these courses in both departments are given in the form of lectures in medium-sized classrooms. And when we look at the participants at Gaziantep University, we collected data from food science and English language and literature classes. At Çukurova University, from mechanical and automotive engineering classes. From each department, we audio recorded these courses for 5 hours, and which made a total of 20 hours audio recorded data. And these classrooms were also observed. And when we look at the background information of English language and literature students, so we can say that it's a female dominant classroom, as you can imagine, as any language focused classroom. So nearly, yes, a quarter of the group is female students, and they are generally between 18 and 24, as any typical university student. And we collected data from all grades actually, but so the dominant group was year 3 in here, and their stated perceived proficiency level was mostly intermediate. And we asked them whether they have been in a different country or studied at a school where English is the language of instruction. For these questions, many of them answered as no, negatively. So when we look at the food science students, so again, the other engineering classrooms were male dominant, but food science classrooms are again female dominant classrooms. 80% are female students, and again they are aged between 18 and 24. So the year 3 and 1 students were more compared to the other groups, and so their perceived proficiency level was intermediate mostly. And for the last 2 questions, been to a different country or studied at a school where English is the language of instruction, they generally answered as no. So for the data collection methods, as I have said, 20 hours of audio recordings, and the lessons were observed with the questions in our heads as what, how, and why it was said at the moment of translanguaging occurred. And we also collected lesson artifacts like slideshows, worksheets, exam papers, student notebooks, and we used conversation analysis and as the methodology of for analyzing audio recorded data. And this multi-method qualitative approach helped us understand the students' and lecturers' orientations towards translanguaging as a learning or teaching strategy, and to examine the natural processes and instances of translanguaging in the classroom, using different tools, including interviews, audio recording, classroom observations, and helped us compensate for the weaknesses of each individual method. And also it helped us with cross-checking the whole data sets to ensure internal and external validity. And here you can see the recording schedule of English language and literature and food science departments. So we collected data mostly between the years of 2019 and 2020, and each lesson lasted about between 40 and 50 minutes. You can see the names of the courses. Generally, they were offered for year one freshman students. However, there were classes for year 4 and 2 and 3. And so these were given by different lecturers. And when we look at the audio recorded data, what did we do with it? So with the audio recorded data, they were transcribed. And so we did sequential analysis, and then translanguaging patterns were examined. So with the analysis, we didn't only analyze single utterances, but sequences of talk in its interactional environment. So we focused on how linguistic behavior of lecturer and the students are connected, and how each turn is constructed, because they co-construct the meaning each time as they take turns, and how participants orient themselves to each other, and also to the context and to the pedagogical focus of the lesson. So these questions were very important. Why does it happen? What meaning-making resources are used during translanguaging? What pedagogical purpose does it serve? And classroom interaction is very important. It can uncover the detailed analysis of the participants' interactional behavior. So now I'm going to give 3 extracts from the data. And the first one is taken from ELL classroom. Here is the background information. It's taken from the second half of the post-colonial literature course offered for year 4 final year students. And they were studying Kehinde, which is a novel by Buchi Emechata. And then it's basically a story of Kehinde and her husband Albert, and they were trying to make a decision about returning to Nigeria from London. Here you will see just the part from the data, and on the side you will see the translated parts of the Turkish expression and statements, and I will go through it. So here the lecturer is reading aloud from the book and also asking students to read, and then at times they stop, they interpret, they comment, they analyze. So it's a very interactive lesson, because I was there, I was recording and also observing this lesson. So here the teacher is reading, the lecturer is reading. Yes, what do you think about the sentence? She doesn't say that Nigerian culture is bad. I don't want to go back to Nigeria. It is primitive, traditional. I adore British culture. She doesn't say that. What she says, so she reads out from the book, the home belongs to men in Nigeria, even if the woman spent her entire life keeping it in order. And then she stops reading. So what do you think about her criticism? And then students take turns. They don't even put their hands up, and they take turns. They watch each other. The floor is never empty. So but no matter what language they speak, they are contributing to the lesson. So here you can see student one nominates herself or himself, and then she says, evi çekip çeviren kadın olmasına rağmen her şeyin erkeğe ait olması ev işlerinin. And then you can see in line 9, and the lecturer also switched to Turkish. Evet, ama bunu nasıl yapıyor? Hani, do you think she is blaming the country, huh? Güzel güzel. Another student is also contributing, and the lecturer is repeating and confirming the answer. Güzel güzel, tatlı tatlı, yani alttan alttan. Nigeria, hani sen de bunu yaptın bize, evleri erkeklere verdin, biz de ev işlerini yaptık diyor. Next paragraph. So here, if we are going to analyze quickly, the lecturer is reading aloud from the book. That's so this flow is quite typical in literature classrooms, and then stops for interpreting, and the floor is open for the students, and they are discussing. So she starts their turn in L1, which is the previous participant's language choice, and she smoothly continues in L2 by connecting L1 and L2 with the Turkish discourse marker, hani, which is also igniting curiosity. And even this part can be the representative of how languages are simultaneously disrupted and co-constructed for the sake of meaning making. It includes continual distraction of borderlines and also co-construction. In this way, speakers convey the message bilingually. If you look at the last word, like next paragraph, and these are the shifting words, and they're always used in English, so they are also discourse markers. And here, translanguaging functions as getting and holding attention of the students, avoiding face-threatening act. If the students contributes in Turkish and the lecturer always matches the students' preferred language to avoid face-threatening, and this encourages participation. So if we look at the second extract, and it's taken from food science classroom, so organic chemistry class offered for freshman students. So here you will see a different type of classroom. We can say that traditional lectures in large amphitheaters, and the smart board is in use for displaying questions. They are doing calculations, visuals. They are using formulas and numbers. So actually, the meaning is always supported with the numbers, formulas, diagrams. So they are studying structure of organic compounds, and in this extract, you will see. So this part was taken from this lesson. The lecturer is at the board, and she's writing on the smart board. So all of the students are working on their notebooks, and they are not expected to speak. Sometimes the lecturer asks some questions, but they are rhetorical questions. So just to hold the attention, the lecturer asks some questions, but not to get answers from the students. Here, this flow, this silence is broken by student 5, and then he goes, hocam, yes, propylene yazdık ya, onun propane olması gerekmiyor mu? Halide'sın, nasıl olacak orası? In which one? Nasıl olacak orası? In the propylene, are you asking? This one? Yes, what's the problem? Propylene. Yes, propylene. 2, 3 carbon is the propane. Is 1 hydrogen is removed from the carbon. What will be one of the carbon? It will be propylene. If you remove the hydrogen from the middle carbon, it will be isopropylene. Okay, so this is the propane, not isopropyl. Okay, if you check the structure of the alkyl group, you will see what is the structure of the propylene. Okay, so the lesson flow was interrupted with the student's question. Generally, the content is delivered only in English, but the questions, the students' questions are accepted, and they are generally in Turkish. And in lines 3 and 4, student 5 takes another turn to express that she's mixing up the term propane and another term propylene. Thus, she uses translanguaging to resolve misunderstanding and negotiating meaning for meaning making. So they negotiating the meaning of propane and propylene is the main focus of the interaction, not the language systems. So there's a good deal of interest in the affixation of carbon structure names and how they work for various compounds. And here the lecturer wants to control the language policy of the lesson. You can see that student continues in Turkish, but the lecturer keeps the language policy and continues in English only. So when I interviewed them, they said we are doing it for students' benefit. So she doesn't shift from L2 to L1. But still, she answers the question, and they still negotiate the meaning, and it's very common. The students are used to it, and they don't expect the lecturer to speak Turkish. So you can see it's more than a direct translation of one or two words. Here, the lecturer takes a moment and makes most of this question, and then gives the key points of the lesson. Here, translanguaging functions as showing identity, because all these greeting words like hocam, arkadaşlar, gençler, all of these are always used in Turkish. Even international students say hocam, arkadaşlar to show respect to the home culture. So it's a way of constructing identity, and it functions as resolving misunderstanding and checking and negotiating meaning. So the third extract is from mechanical engineering, and they are studying fluid mechanics too, offered for third-year students. And again, here the same, a similar classroom environment, smart board, and they are doing calculations, and there are visuals on the board. They are writing down and doing calculations, actively listening, but not producing anything, not talking, not interacting with each other or with the teacher, unless they have a problems in understanding. So they are studying hydrostatic pressure in a solar pond, and here you can see at the beginning of the lecturer and the lesson, the lecturer is checking whether they can see the board, they can hear him well, and taking the register. So all these preparations are done in Turkish. Ekranı görüyor muyuz gençler? Evet hocam. Sesim iyi geliyor mu? İyi hocam. Evet arkadaşlar, again you can see the greeting word arkadaşlar always in Turkish. We are going to study hydrostatic pressure in a solar pond with variable density. Before I start my lecture, let me see how many students are here. 1, 3, 6, 8, 20. So he's counting the register. And then bekle ki adamlar derse gelsin. And then let's start. So again, we can see like next paragraph, next page, let's start. So all of these are shifting words are always in English. And so these off the task talks were always provided in Turkish. So they are they are aware of whether they are on task or off task. When they are on task, the lecturers only use English. But when they are off the task, like ekranı görüyor muyuz gençler, or complaining about disciplinary issues, bekle ki adamlar derse gelsin, they generally use Turkish. So the lecturer is checking whether all the lesson materials are ready. The shifts between languages are very common. And when they are on the task or off the task, openings, closings, shifts between different parts of the lesson are the times when translanguaging is more frequently used. The lecturer connects with the students in the language that the majority of the class share. So in lines 7 and 8, the lecturer uses L1 for complaining about students in attendance, and L1 is generally preferred for disciplinary issues. For example, when they are going to warn the students for using their mobile phones, they do it in Turkish to make sure that it's all understood from everybody, by all students. And the lecturer doesn't want to risk the students not understanding his point. In this way, mutual understanding is secured. During the delivery of the content, the lecturer uses English only unless the flow of the delivery is interrupted by a question by a student, and generally in Turkish. In general, if the question is asked in Turkish, the answer is often produced in English, not in Turkish. If it's the break time, it can be in Turkish, because when I asked these to the lecturers, some of them said we've got international students, so using the mother tongue is not always good. So the medium of instruction of this classroom is English. So they come to this. They chose these departments because they are in English. So then they are keen users of the language of the instruction, English, in the lesson for content delivery. Here we can say that there is only unidirectional interaction from teachers to the students, and sometimes from students to the teachers. There is no multi-directional interaction like between pairs or in groups. So at the break time, the lecturer restates her statement, let's have a break. And arkadaşlar bir ara verelim, as you can see in line 9. So it's very common. So students L1 and L2 cooperate, so they reveal the message in the content in tandem. Restatements play an important role in translanguaging practices for many reasons, such as clarification, building rapport between students and lecturers, and also for scaffolding. So here translanguaging functions as checking lesson materials, openings, closings of the lesson, restatement, shifting when you say let's start, or greeting when you say hello everybody in Turkish, merhaba gençler, and also building rapport. So here we will see the background information of ELL participants which we interviewed. And so we interviewed 15 students. Nearly half of them are female and the other half is male. Most of them are Turkish students, and nearly half of them are year 1, the other half is year 3. Only 2 year 4 students, their proficiencies like between B1 and B2, and their first language is Turkish, except one student. He stated he's a Syrian student and his mother tongue is Arabic, and their second language is English. And here you will see the interview results. And we, with the interview data, it was transcribed and we did content analysis, and we reached about 8 teams. And you will see some representative quotation stated by the students, and the frequencies are given in the parentheses. So they all say that it's an ubiquitous practice in and out of the classroom. And so they say lecturers use it for holding our attention. And many students stated that they lose their attention very quickly in EMI context. That's why it's important that sometimes they change the mode, they move from one language to another. So that's important for holding their attention. The second one, the content is more important than the language choice. So they are there for content mastery. They say their aim is not to learn English, so their aim is to learn the content. So languages can only be aids for them. So for a deeper, critical, and effective discussion, you need your mother tongue. So that's what they said. For going deeper, they say they need to understand it in the mother tongue as well. So translanguaging helps deeper understanding, internalizing, and personalizing. So they say to process the information, the content, they do a lot of things actually. So, for example, one student from year 3 says, when we are learning about a novel, for example, Dracula, we read it in English and then in Turkish with different translations. And then they watch the movie as well. So they learn, so you can see the different layers for learning something much better, for going deeper. And they use translanguaging for note-taking. So as I said, we collected their notebooks and took photos of them. And so interestingly, it's like the mirror of their linguistic repertoire. So with Turkish students, they used Turkish and English together, but not randomly. They used it in a very strategic way. And also when I checked Arabic students, international students' notebooks, so I saw that Arabic students, for example, as they also know Turkish, they used Arabic, Turkish, and English. So we can say that similar to their linguistic repertoire, their note-taking is also very unique and very personalized. And so, okay, next one, lecturers should be more strict about English only policy. So they generally contradict with each other because they stated that they want the opportunity of using their L1 when they want to, but they don't want their lecturers to use it. So they say lecturers should be more stricter about English, protecting English only policy in the classroom. Otherwise, they say that it can easily go out of hand. So then everybody can end up speaking in Turkish. So there should be a ratio. So English should be the language spoken more in these classrooms. So they say lecturers shouldn't provide the Turkish equivalent straight away. They should simplify the complex language first. For me, explaining something in Turkish should be the last resort, not the first one. So translanguaging has a detrimental effect on L2 oral skills. That's one of their worries, actually. They say if a native speaker comes to, or if we have an interaction with a native speaker, they wouldn't understand us because we use this composite language mixed with English, Turkish. So they say only Turkish students who can speak English can understand us. So that's why they are worried about it's bad for their oral skills because they get used to speak that way. And lecturers should provide only English lesson materials. They see English lesson materials as skeleton notes, and they say it can be hard to reach them. So they see them as primary sources. They say they don't need secondary sources because they can easily reach them. So they want English only materials. So studying in EMI context is not challenging. So again, this quotation is interesting. So Mohammed is the only Arabic student in this group. He says we use coding for literary terms and definitions in mythology. For example, James Joyce. Joyce means a kind of tree, walnut tree in Arabic. And you imagine Ulysses as the fruit of the tree. You can see even the coding system, even the strategies they use are very, very personal and very unique to them. So Turkish students who can speak English wouldn't make this similarity because probably there is no, possible coding. So we had similar interview results. I will just go through them very quickly. That's the background information of the food science students who were interviewed. So again, you can see 15 students were interviewed from this classroom. Most of them are female students. Again, most of the students are Turkish. Only 3 of them are Persian, Iraqi or Syrian. Again, half of the group is studying in year 1, the other half is studying in year 3. And basically, their levels are around B1 and B2. Their mother tongues, many of them are speaking Turkish, native speakers of Turkish or Arabic. And their second language is English. So when we look at them, I will just say the different ones. So again, they accepted that it's a common practice. They use it for deeper understanding, and they think that it improves all their skills. They are aware that translanguaging also supports their Turkish, so or Arabic, depending on their mother tongue. And they stated that they struggle in verbal lessons because in the numerical lessons, they say there are numbers, diagrams, charts supporting the meaning, but with verbal lessons, they said they struggle more. So it's probably because of their limited level of English. So they use translanguaging for note taking. So compared to other group, they find English only policy is challenging because they said the lessons are already hard, content mastery is already challenging. So then EMI context is bringing another layer of difficulty. So they agree that lecturers should be strict about using English in the classroom. And also they agree that translanguaging has a detrimental effect on their oral skills. And they think that lecturers should provide them with only English materials. When we compare these classrooms and we reach this, so ELL learning context, so they have theoretical and literary sources, and they are utilized for content delivery. And so the literary work is read aloud in English, and the discussion features translanguaging. When we look at the engineering classroom, the smart board is extensively used for content delivery. Calculations and diagrams support the meaning, not the translanguaging. When we look at the translanguaging practices in ELL classroom, and English is recognizably the main, but not the only language of instruction. Key terminology is always in L2, and some literary concepts are translated. Some of them are kept depending on the aim of the lesson. Some statements from literary text in English are kept for the originality, for the effect, for giving some effect. The same utterances can be restated in L1 and L2 for deeper understanding. And feedbacks generally match the students' preferred language. So as we have seen in the extract, the lecturers match the students' preferred language. Reference words such as arkadaşlar, hocam are always in home language in both classrooms. When we look at the food science classroom, so English is the main language of instruction, unless the flow was interrupted with Turkish questions. Key terminology is in English, and scientific terms, concepts are generally kept in English, but sometimes translated if there's a confusion. And statement can shuttle between L1 and L2, so the same utterance can be restated in both languages. Feedback is mainly in L2, and over translanguaging is mostly used for students' individual questions. When we look at the functions and factors motivating L1 use, in ELL classroom, members of the classroom build rapport by using Turkish resources. And Turkish resources are used for intercultural topics and for hot topics, critical questions, for unpacking meaning, and for inexistent literary terminology like abject, or for shifts between topics. And so being on and out of the task can affect students' L1 and L2 use. And English resources are strategically used for taboo topics, and translanguaging is used for expressing emotions and for creating humor. In food science or engineering classrooms, lecturers build rapport with Turkish resources, with greeting addressee words. And so Turkish is especially used for disciplinary issues like the one we saw in the second extract. And translanguaging is used for critical and challenging questions. And Turkish resources are used for unpacking the meaning. Some Turkish resources, if they are non-existent in the target language, like pekmez or baklava, these are always used in the mother tongue because there is no equivalence. And being on and out of a task affects lecturers' L1 and L2 use. So when we look at the turn-taking patterns, so you can see the turn-taking pattern in ELL classes. So you can see 50% of the turns were taken by the lecturer, and the 48% of it were taken to students. So we can say that ELL lecturers share the floor equally with the students. But when we look at the engineering food science classroom, so the lecturer takes the turn 70%, but the students takes the turn 29%. So we can say that in food science classrooms, translanguaging is not a common asset. Also, because students don't have the opportunity of taking turns, and they are not expected to interact or contribute to the lesson. There is a different mode of classroom. So over translanguaging, we can say in ELL classrooms doubles the one in the food science classroom. So to conclude, translanguaging is a central component of the classrooms in these programs. Both students and academics benefit from translanguaging, but to different extents. The study identifies similarities and differences. Similarities, frequency of the difference are frequency of translanguaging, functional uses, and interactional patterns. So common uses supporting content comprehension, facilitating classroom management, building rapport. And so in ELL classroom, translanguaging is used for understanding content, checking comprehension, and we can see that translanguaging is used more frequently, and it's richer because they take more turns. So students are given more opportunities to take turns, to speak more. So then they translanguage more. They use the language in a more flexible way. So these classrooms are more student-centered classrooms. They have rich opportunities for taking turns and for over translanguaging. So English in this classroom is viewed as an aim and also an aid for accessing content. In food science programs, so it's more teacher-centered classrooms. There are limited opportunities for taking turns and also for over translanguaging. So English is viewed as an aid only for accessing the content. So some suggestions: we educators, lecturers, we should be more welcoming for L1 use in the classroom by being aware of their benefits to their courses. And we should address students' language needs and tailor their policies and resources accordingly by conducting a needs analysis. And there should be a continuous multilingual language support. And we generally know that our students go to prep schools, and then later on there are not many lessons supporting their linguistic abilities. Actually, there should be some courses like maybe for creative writing, for writing a report, or for writing academic assignments or making a presentation. And there should be a more multilingual perspective, and we should adopt to keep pace with rapid changes in knowledge in a global world. And L1 use should be more planned and strategic, and translanguaging use should be introduced into education schemes as a contemporary teaching and learning strategy, because so as a contemporary teaching and learning strategy, so prospective teachers should be prepared for the changing classroom environments. So here are my selected references. I know I have kept you long, so thank you for your attention and patience. So here is my contact details if you want to ask me any questions. Thank you.
Hocam biz teşekkür ederiz. Sunumunuz için çok ilham verici bir sunumdu gerçekten. Şimdi soru cevap bölümümüz var. Sohbet bölümünden, sohbet kısmından gelen soruları görebilirsiniz. Biraz
Tamam.
bekleyelim.
O zaman bundan dur. Çıkarsam mı göreceğim? Bir dakika.
Evet, sohbete tıklarsanız bir
Hı,
soru geldi, isterseniz ben de okuyabilirim soruyu.
tamam. Ben henüz görmedim ama bir dakika.
Sohbet, katılımcıların hemen yanında sohbet var. Oraya tıklarsanız görüyorsunuz.
Sohbeti açtım ama teşekkürü gördüm ama e,
Hemen
şey
altında bir soru var. Ben okuyayım isterseniz size.
tabii.
Dil öğrenmeyi bisiklet sürmeye benzetmiştiniz hocam. Bu metaforla el 1 ve el 2'nin öğrenmedeki dengesini mi yoksa sürekli çabayı mı kastettiniz? Çünkü bilirsiniz ki pedalı çevrilmeyen bisiklet kendi momentumuyla bir süreye kadar ilerleyecektir diye soru sormuş Harun Güngör.
Aslında şöyle demiştim. Tekrar açmış olayım. E, Dil öğrenmek bisiklet sürmeye benzemez. Bisikletin iki tekeri vardır ve bu iki teker dengede gitmek zorundadır. Oysa ki bizim ana dilimizle öğrendiğimiz işte ikinci dil artık hedef dil artık ne diyorsak her zaman aynı dengede olmaz. Çünkü ana dil farklı bir şeydir, farklı süreçlerden geçer ama ikinci dil farklı süreçlerden geçer. E, ikinci dilin ya da hedef dilin her zaman ana dilin ne kadar ne yaparsak yapalım eğer ki o ülkede yaşayıp her gün o dili ana dilimiz gibi öğrenmediysek her zaman ana dilin gerisinde olacağını kabul etmemiz gerekiyor. Biz eğer bisiklet sürmeye benzetirsek bunu her zaman birinci tekerle ikinci tekeri yarıştırıyoruz demektir. Bu da şuna sebep olur. Her zaman başarısızlık hissi. Aslında tamamen biz yani dilleri birbiriyle yarıştırmıyoruz. Bu işte translanguaging teori daha çok e, diyor ki yani bu dillerin arasında olmayı da kabul etmemiz lazım ve bu öğrencileri işte gelişmekte olan işte potansiyel işte iki dilli, potansiyel çok dilli olarak görmemiz lazım diyor. Dolayısıyla benzemiyor aslında.
Teşekkür ediyoruz hocam. Bunun
Rica
üzerine bir
ederim.
soru olursa zaten yazacaktır kendisi.
Tabii,
Harun Güngör. Onun dışında şu an bir soru görünmüyor ama biraz bekleyelim isterseniz.
tabii, tabii. Buyurun. Ben
Bir soru daha geliyor
Yağmur
galiba. Görüyorsunuz galiba şu an soruları.
Hanım. Şimdi bunu gördüm. Tabii soruyu da görebilir miyim bilmiyorum. Ha,
Evet, onu da şimdi yazdı.
evet. Eğitim dili İngilizce olan sınıflarda bir konunun anlaşılmadığı durumda öğretmen Türkçe olarak açıklama yaptığında ve öğrenciler sadece kendi ana dillerinde bunu algıladığında, örneğin evet şimdi anladım gibi tepkiler verebilir. Bu durumda bir dakika. Bu durumda şu ne? Bir şey engel. Ha, daha çok öğretmenin İngilizce açıklama yapma becerisinden mi daha çok kaynaklanır? Yoksa daha çok öğrencinin kavrama becerisinden mi kaynaklanır? Ya da bu durumda bu ayrımı nasıl yapabiliriz? Şimdi bunu aslında söylemek çok zor. Bir, öğrenci profillerine bakmak gerekir. İki, öğretmenin öğretme tarzına bakmak gerekir. Üç, öğrencilerin seviyesine bakmak gerekir. Mesela işte öğrencilere A1 A2 seviyesinde daha çok ana dilde destek ya da anlamla ilgili işte bu işte Translanguaging olabilir, ana dil desteği, işte görseller olabilir, işte işitsel birçok kaynakla aslında eğer siz A1 A2 kitabını düşünürseniz çok fazla görseller göreceksiniz değil mi? Yani mutlaka resimlidir, şeylidir, işte dinlemesi vardır. Çok fazla desteklenir. Yani öğrenci anlama bir yerden yakalamaz. Birçok yerden yakalar. Ama siz bir B1 kitabına gittiğinizde ya da daha üstü seviyeleri eğer ki EMI sa o zaman zaten bence işte öğrencilerin de söylediği bu çalışmada e, çok farklı şekillerde eğer illa İngilizceye devam edilecekse edilebilir. Ama bazen öyle bir şey oluyor ki mesela yani biz de ben çeviri bölümünde çalışıyorum. Bundan önce de yine okutmanlık da yaptım, dil hocalığı yaptım. Çok farklı, çok dilli ortamlarda da çalıştım. Mesela çok dilli ortamda çalıştığınızı düşünün. Her öğrencinin ana dili farklı. Yani orada zaten translanguaging yapmak çok zor. Farklı yollarla öğrenciyi desteklemeniz gerekir. Ama öğrenciyle aynı ana dili paylaşıyorsanız ve bazen bazı noktalar olur. Orada belki Turkish idiom mesela söylemek çok uygun olabilir. Çünkü biz aslında bir dilden diğerine geçtiğimizde işte ne bileyim humor için de yapıyoruz bunu, creative olmak için de yapıyoruz, critical olmak için de yapıyoruz. Ben işte belki çok uzun Türkçe olarak konuşurum ama e, mesela yine datada da vardı. Hocam money talks diyor mesela. Ha, noktalıyor ve direkt anlamı geçiriyor. Dolayısıyla şimdi bu bizim işte incelediğimiz literature gruplarında dili o kadar zengin bir şekilde konuşuyorlar ki yani İngilizce dil becerileri zayıf olduğundan mı? Hayır. Gayet İngilizce de ifade edebilirler ama bu aslında e, mesela çok dilli ya da iki dilli insanlara bakın. Bütün dilleri aynı anda konuşuyorlar. Konuşamadığından mı o dilde? Hayır. Dolayısıyla kreatif olmak istiyor, dille oynamak istiyor, bütün repertuarını kullanmak istiyor. Bunların hepsi de böyle şey gibi hem öğretimimizi daha efektif kılıyor hem de aslında bir taraftan da zenginlik katıyor. O yüzden öğrenci şimdi bakıyorum tekrar soruyu cevaplayabildim mi, gerekli cevapları aldı mı diye. Ama dediğim gibi çok farklı kontekst var. O yüzden şu kontekste şu kadar öğrenciyle şu kadar ders saatiyle şu yani daha spesifik sorulduğunda daha farklı belki daha spesifik bir cevap verilebilir ama ben biraz şimdi daha genel bir cevap verdim. Umarım yararlı olmuştur.
Teşekkür ederiz hocam. Bir de arkadaşımız Maftun'a el kaldırıyor, parmak
Tabii.
kaldırıyor. Ona söz verelim.
İyi
Yazıcı.
akşamlar herkese. Vildan hocam çok teşekkür ederiz. Sunumunuz çok güzeldi, muhteşemdi. Şimdi sunumun başında aslında bende soru vardı. İşte code switching ile bu translanguaging farkı ne acaba diye düşünüyordum ama sunum süresince işte ben kendi cevabımı almış gibi oldum. Ama yine de bir emin olmak için nasıl ayırt edebileceğimizi sormak istiyorum. Yani böyle Translanguaging daha çok eğitim sırasında bilinçli bir şekilde işte tartışma için ya da daha çok anlaşılmak için işte öğrencilerle etkileşim için kullanıyoruz bilinçli olarak. Ama code switching böyle hani insan bilerek yapmıyor onu. Daha çok kişisel olduğunu düşünüyorum. Mesela kendini daha rahat ifade edebilmesi için o an başka dile geçiyor. Hani arasındaki fark böyle değil mi yani? Emin olmak için soruyorum.
Bir de ben açıklayayım. Olur mu?
Teşekkürler
Kısaca.
hocam önden.
Eğer vaktimiz var değil mi?
Evet
Yani
evet buyurun
sorular
hocam
gelmişken,
lütfen.
öğrencilerimizi bulmuşken biz
Evet
hepimiz
evet
hoca olduğumuz için sorular gelince cevaplamak istiyor. Şimdi Maftuna,
teşekkür
e,
ederiz.
işte code switching ile translanguaging ilk tanıtıldığında code switching ile çok karşılaştırılması yapıldı. Dendi ki ya hani hep böyle aynı şeylere farklı farklı tanımlar, isimler konuluyor. Bu da onlardan biri mi gibi. Aslında tamamen farklı. Biri yani bakış açısı farklı. Şöyle ki code switching dediğimizde bizim dilleri kod olarak görmemiz lazım. Dolayısıyla dilleri kod olarak gören ne? Yapısalcılar. Yapısalcı teoriyle bakmış oluyorsun sen dile. Dolayısıyla diyorsun ki işte bu İngilizce, bu Türkçe, bu Almanca diyorsun ve dilleri birbirinden ayrıştırıyorsun. E, ama şimdi bu bizim translanguaging dediğimiz çok dilli ya da iki dilli insanların gözlenebilir olan e, dil değişikliği davranışına odaklanıyor. E, ve dilleri kod olarak görmeye tamamen karşı. Diyor ki yani biz mesela işte çok tartışılıyor. İngilizce çok prestijli bir dil. Neden? Onu prestijli yapan ne? Dilsel özellikleri mi yoksa ona yüklenen anlam mı? Ya da tarihsel süreci mi? İşte atıyorum Türkçeyi ya da başka bir dili daha işte prestijli yapmayan daha ya da farklı yapan nedir? Diyor ki bunlar dillerdir. Bunlar işte tek bir artık havuz gibi, repertuar gibi tutulur ve bunları birbirinden böyle adaletsiz bir şekilde farklı farklı anlamlar yüklemek yanlıştır diyor. Daha eşitlikçi bir yaklaşım aslında. Maftuna
Teşekkürler hocam. Çok
rica
teşekkür
ederim.
ederim. Daha da
Rica ederim.
e,
Açık
derin
oldu mu
bilgiler almış
bilemiyorum.
olduk. Evet, anladım
Ama daha
hocam.
aklınızda soru kalırsa lütfen kontak detaylarım orada e-mail yazabilirsiniz cevaplarımda.
Tamamdır hocam. Çok teşekkürler.
Rica ederim. Ben teşekkür ederim.
Teşekkür ediyoruz hocam hem sunumunuz için hem soru cevap kısmındaki açıklayıcı cevaplarınız için. Şu an başka soru yok. Ama hocamızın da dediği gibi eğer sormak istediğiniz başka sorular varsa eminim sizinle arkadaşlarım, buradaki hocalarımız, arkadaşlarımız iletişime geçecektir. Çok teşekkür ediyoruz katılımınız için.
Ben teşekkür ederim. Bu network'ün bir parçası olmak çok güzel. Ee, ayrıca birkaç saat sonra burada benim doğum günüm olacak. Tebriklerinizi de
Doğum gününüz
alabilirim. Benim
kutlu
için
olsun hocam.
doğum günüme böyle güzel bir etkinlikle ve sizle girmek çok çok güzel oldu. Bu da kayıtlara geçmiş olsun. Dinleyen, gelen herkese çok çok teşekkür ederim. Ee, Pelin hocama, Murat hocama hepinize çok teşekkürler.
Hocam çok sağ olun. Dilbilim bölümü adına tekrar teşekkür ederiz. O zaman kapatalım yavaş yavaş. Sonraki konuşmada görüşmek üzere. Artık sizin de desteklerinizi bekliyoruz izleyici olarak,
Hocam,
dinleyici olarak.
ben de olabildiğince gelmeye çalışacağım ama biliyorum siz kendiniz gelemezseniz öğrencilerinizi gönderin diyorsunuz
Aynen.
her zaman.
Aynen öyle.
Öğrencilerimi hocam göndereceğim ve onlara da diyeceğim biz Vildan Hoca gönderdi ve biz buradayız.
Tamam, süper.
Yazmalarını, teşekkür etmelerini isteyeceğim. Buradan da öğrenci, yani Türkiye'den öğrencilerim var ama buradan da çok dilli. Şimdi burada e, öğrenciler 3-4 dili birden konuşuyorlar coğrafyasından ötürü. E, Buradaki öğrencilerin de sizin bu çalışmanızdan çok yararlanacaklarını düşünüyorum.
Tamam, çok teşekkür ederiz tekrardan. Ağzınıza sağlık. O zaman
Rica ederim.
haftaya görüşmek üzere diyelim. Haftaya sanırım yok tabii. Haftaya ayın 15'inde. Neden yok? Çünkü Ulusal Dil Bilim Kurultayı var. Ulusal Dil
Hı.
Bilim Kurultayı olduğu için böyle bir ara veriyoruz. Ayın 22'sine devam edeceğiz. 22'sinde de yanlış hatırlamıyorsam Emre Hoca'nın konuşması var. Emre Yağlı'nın Dil İdeolojileri başlıklı bir konuşması var. O zaman ayın 22'sinde görüşmek üzere. Önümüzdeki haftayı UDK nedeniyle bypass ediyoruz. Teşekkür ederiz. O zaman herkese iyi akşamlar. Böylelikle de oturumu kapatıyorum.
İyi
İyi
akşamlar.
Görüşmek üzere.
akşamlar. Herkese görüşmek üzere.